My name is Margaret, 71 years old. My dear's Alban Town. Widow for almost 10. I live in a simple house here in Rochester, New York, with a wooden porch and a garden that I planted with my own hands. It's where I lived with Thomas, my husband, until God took him away in a work accident. Since then, who has stayed with me is the longing. And Benjamin, my only son. Have you ever wondered what it would be like to hear from your own son that he got married? Without you? Without warning? No invitation? Why? No place in the ceremony? Well, aligning. That's exactly what happened to me. And maybe, like me, you've given too much. Too. Made plans for love. Be prepared with care. And suddenly he realized that the only thing they forgot, it was you. If you've come this far, thinking you're going to hear another Owl Mother story, get ready, because what I'm going to tell you is not an invention, nor an exaggeration. It's just the truth that remained after the dress hanging in the closet never left the label, and the photo at the altar never happened. What happened after that phone call? It changed my whole life, Mulan. And it's going to change how you see a mother's silence. But before we dive into the heart of this story, I need you to know something. Not every wound makes a noise when it opens. Sometimes it's just a short sentence, said without hesitation, that cuts deeper than any scream. Mine came so smoothly that it seemed like a lie. We got married yesterday. 4 words. That's all she said. And when I asked why, the answer came even drier. It was just for special people. In that instant, everything I had built out of love, every penny saved, every gesture of help, none, every plan made in silence, came to nothing. But I held back the tears, as so many times in my life, little quiet, and turned that pain into something they never expected. Strength. Now, if you've ever felt like your presence has been forgotten, if you've ever been left aside by those who should call you family, I invite you to stay with me. Press the like button. Subscribe to the channel. Subscribe to the channel. Because this story is of an old woman who shut up to not beg, and today he tells everything not out of sorrow, but so that none of us thinks he deserved so little. If you understand this kind of silence, then this story is also yours. I've always been a woman of simple habits. I like to wake up early, put the kettle in the fire, and listen to the radio quietly as the morning light pours in through the kitchen window. On Sundays, I carefully style my hair, put on my blue dress with pearl buttons, and go to church at St. Mark's, here in the neighborhood, on the yard. It is there that I meet my lifelong friends. And calm, of the night eternity, but is more still, but it you. After the service, we have coffee at the corner cafeteria and talk about flowers, grandchildren, and old pains, because after a certain age, we learn that all of this goes together. My garden is my refuge. Back there, in the sunniest part of the backyard, I planted daisies and lavenders, Thomas always said that our backyard smelled of peace. I kept it alive. I still talk to him sometimes. I take the wooden chair, sit by the rose bush we planted on our 30th anniversary, and tell how strange the world is. Thomas, if you saw what happened to Ben, nay, Anna, Pepple, James A. Tanakaborn, and I. But I stop. He'd didn't deserve to know. Benjamin has always been my world. Since he was born, I say, well, up here I have never spared efforts for him. When Thomas left in that accident at the construction site, I turned everything upside down so as not to miss anything. I cleaned the family home, sold candy at the local school, sewed clothes at night while he slept. Nothing weighed me down, because everything was for him. When Ben entered university, it was a joy that I can't even describe. I applied for a personal loan to top up what the student insurance didn't cover. When he wanted to buy his first car, I wore my father's gold ring. I melted it down and sold it. We do that, right? Mother does this without thinking, and I never complained. On the contrary, I thanked God for giving me the strength to continue. When he met Lena, I made an effort to like her. She was pretty, polite. At first, she even seemed affectionate to me. She called me Mrs. Margie and said that my apple cake was the best in the state. But over time, it changed. Gradually, he stopped coming to Sunday meals. He said he had a headache, a lot of work. Benjamin always justified it for her, and I swallowed it quietly. We swallow a lot of things for fear of losing the little that is left. Once, Lena had an appendicitis crisis, and they had to operate in a hurry. Ben called me in desperation. I had saved some money to go on a trip with my friends from my youth, our old ladies' retreat, as we joked, but I canceled everything and used every penny to pay part of the hospital. I didn't even think twice. I just thought, no, she's my son's wife, and soon he will be part of the family. Later, when Ben lost his job and were 3 months behind on their rent, I went to the bank and withdrew some of the fund Thomas had left for my old age. I remember counting the bills on the kitchen table and putting them in an envelope. I took it to their apartment. Lena didn't even thank her. He only said, Mom, that solves only this month's, and the next one? To this day, I don't know if what hurt the most was the phrase, or the tone with which she said it. The other day, I found an old pearl necklace that I got from my mother when I married Thomas. It was at the bottom of the drawer, along with other memories of the time when being a wife, mother, and caregiver was enough. I looked at him and thought, will everything I did for them ever be remembered? Pause here. Because I know there are a lot of people who understand me. Sometimes we give so much that we forget to keep some for ourselves. If you've been through this, if you've ever felt that everything you delivered turned to dust in the hearts of those who received it, comments below. He writes, I've lived it, or it touched me, because when we share the pain, it becomes less heavy. Returning on, my house was becoming emptier. Visits decreased. They only called when they needed something. And even so, I cheered up when the phone rang. Is it Ben? Us. And it almost always was. But the joy was short-lived. It was never supposed to invite me to dinner. It was never supposed to know if I was okay. It was always a bill, a problem, a favor. No. Until one autumn afternoon, one of those when the leaves already cover the yard and the wind seems to bring some news, I called to find out about the wedding. I had my dress ready, my hair marked in the salon, and a wedding gift stored in the closet. A patchwork quilt that I started sewing more than a year ago, with pieces of fabric from my story. There was cloth from the dress I wore at Ben's christening, a piece of the curtain from our first house, a lace from the skirt I wore for Christmas when Lena had dinner with us for the first time. I thought they would understand the value of that. Little did I know that what for me was memory, for them it was just junk. And it was on that day, on the phone, that everything began to fall apart. But do you know what's worse than pain? It is the silence that comes after it, and what happened right after that call. It was just the beginning, because there are people who don't need to raise their voices to take revenge. She just needs to stop answering when they call. Do you want to know what I said after she told me that? So listen to what's next, because even I didn't know I was capable. After that call, it seems like a movie started playing in my head. But it wasn't a pretty movie. It was a puzzle of memories that I previously thought were normal. But now they shouted at me, as if to say, you only didn't see it because you didn't want to. And maybe that was it. Maybe I played blind so I wouldn't feel what already hurt in silence. I remember, for example, one night when I invited the two of them to dinner here at home. I made roast chicken with potatoes, as Benjamin always liked. I prepared the table with good crockery, the one I only take out of the cupboard on special dates. They arrived late. Lena came in and didn't even look me in the eyes. He said a dry hi, went straight to his cell phone. During dinner, the two talked to each other, laughed at jokes I didn't understand, and every time I tried to include myself, it was as if my time had passed. At one point, I went to get more juice from the kitchen, and when I came back, they were whispering. They stopped when they saw me. I'd better go. Alan, nice city shy. Lena said, I'll publish the Lord's tomorrow. We have to wake up early tomorrow. That was months ago. But only now do I realize that that dinner was not a family gathering. It was just a favor. And the favors, over time, became an obligation. Now, until myself, when Benjamin came here, it was always in a hurry. He said he was solving 1,000 things and barely sat on the couch. The visits lasted less than 20 minutes. There was a Sunday when I made him a chocolate cake, just like I did in childhood. He didn't even touch it. He said that Lena was on a diet and that it was better not to provoke her. It hurt me, but I disguised it with a smile. Better this way, right? Health first, I said, even though I felt the cake cool like my chest. And the messages, my. The messages, I would say, "Hi, son, how are you?" And received a dry all right, without continuation. If he asked about Lena, he changed the subject. If he asked about marriage, he didn't talk. We're still seeing things. Mom, I believed it. I believed because I wanted to. Because the truth hurts more than the lie we choose to believe. There was also Benjamin's birthday. I bought a very expensive wool blouse from the brand he always liked. I wrapped it in gold paper, wrote a card with my shaky handwriting, and took it to the apartment. When I arrived, there was a party. Small but lively. The lights were on, music playing, people laughing in the room. Lena opened the door with a surprised face that she couldn't disguise. "Ah, you came." Benjamin took a long time to appear. When she came, she gave me a quick hug and said, Wow, we were going to call you. Mom, Heide Sterne, what is your watercard? But it ended up being something last minute. There was no place for me at the table. I stayed there for about 15 minutes. I handed over the gift, made up an excuse, and returned home with a cake wrapped in my bag. It was that night that I started to sleep with the television on. The silence was getting too noisy, but even so, I still thought it was something in my head. That they were busy, which was Lena's way. That Benjamin was just a tired man trying to balance things. Once, I heard him saying on the phone, not knowing I was around, "My mother sometimes weighs him down." You know, that paralyzed me. I stood behind the door, a tray of biscuits in my hand. And yet, when I walked in, I smiled and said, "I brought tea." I thought love was enough, that one day he would realize that all this was just a phase. But it wasn't. It was a process. I calculated my subtle? No. Polite detachment, so polite that it seemed respectful. But it wasn't. It was rejection wrapped in silence. And now, looking back, I wonder, how many times did they make it clear that I was left over? What young. And I pretended it was affection? How many clues did I ignore for fear of admitting that my son was no longer mine? And the worst, could it be that? Deep down, true, he never was? I only saw what I wanted. I saw that boy in school uniform run around the yard. I didn't see the adult man, shaped by another woman who decided to erase everything I had been. And at that moment, after the cruel call, I started to see. And when we start to see, there is no way to unsee it anymore. But was I prepared to find out how far they would be able to go? Was that phone call really the lowest point? Or was there more to come? Because what happened in the following weeks, it was what really broke my heart. And that's what I need to tell you now. One hot card Good job. Und used to, I'd say. It was an ordinary Tuesday. One of those in which the sky seems undecided between opening or crying. I was in the kitchen. Ow. Separating the samples of the flowers I wanted to suggest for the wedding. Champagne roses. Ow. White carnations. I had even written down the contacts of the flower shops in my green notebook. The one with the leather cover I got from Thomas. After breakfast, I sat in the living room armchair with the phone on my lap, adjusted my glasses, and dialed Ben's number with a calm expectation in my chest. One of those that only hope knows how to provoke. The call called a few times until someone answered. It was her voice. Lena, odd-eyed, unconditional, always too sweet to sound sincere. Hi, Margaret, she said. Meow. Hello, they still cut you, as if talking to a distant neighbor. How are you? I replied with affection, as I always did. I asked if they had set the date of the wedding, because I wanted to help choose the flowers. She was silent for a couple of seconds, and then said, "No," in a calm tone, almost as if she were telling a gossip. "No. Oh, we got married yesterday." For a moment, no. I thought I had heard it wrong. No, not it soon. I got that. But she repeated it with the same cruel lightness. It was just for special people. The floor is gone. Nizil talent. Magenta sill. The room turned. Ah. I held the phone as if it were lead, with my other hand resting on the arm of the armchair, trying to maintain some dignity inside me. On the other end of the line, Unasio tout on a purse. Benjamin didn't say a word. He was there now. I could hear the breathing, but there was no Mom. Sorry. How? Let know it uncommon. I consort. Instead, there was nothing, and maybe that hurt more than her phrase. His silence. The mute consent of those who had already left me behind a long time ago. The pink dress ID bought so carefully, stored for months, still with the tag, hung in my bedroom closet. The week before, I had taken it to iron. I left it on the lace-lined hanger. I put a lavender sachet inside the cover to make it fragrant for the big day, a day that never existed for me. While she was talking, I looked at my house, to the table with the new placemat, now, which I had set aside for the celebration dinner, for the empty photo album, which I was thinking of starting that weekend, with a photo of me next to them at the altar. Everything was presence, and suddenly, it became an absence. I ended the call with a simple "I see." Wow. And I hung up. No scandal. Wow. No crying. No scene. No. I sat there for a time that I can't measure. Maybe hours. Maybe days within an hour. At my age, we learn not to scream. He learns that there are pains that can only be crossed in silence. I went to the bedroom, looked at the dress, and I closed the zipper of the cover as if burying a dream. Then I went back to the living room, prepared some tea, and sat down again. The cup trembled slightly in my hand, but the face, his face was serene. The body hardens when the soul does not want to fall. And that day, something in me hardened for good. I didn't cry, oh, but I felt that something inside me died. Confidence? Perhaps. Ooh. Or the illusion that love is a guarantee of respect. I still hear her phrase, sometimes, before going to sleep. It was just for special people. And I ask myself, why? If I, who gave my whole life for that boy, am not special, who is it? And what else do they think they can do without me? Little did I know that this was not yet the end of the humiliation, because what came after that call, it was even more cruel. The next day, the house looked different. It was the same house where I raised Benjamin, the same room where we celebrated his birthdays, the same sofa where he fell asleep on my lap on Sunday afternoons. But now, everything seemed to stare me back. The dining room table, now, which I had polished with such care the day before, was still laid out with the white lacy tablecloth. I had put her there to plan the engagement dinner. I dreamed of flowers on it, bowls of apple juice, family laughter, ween. Now, all I saw was silence. The kind of silence that weighs on your shoulders. I sat there alone, staring into the void, and felt as if that towel was covering me like a hospital sheet. I went to the closet, took out the photo album, and sat on the bed. I ran my fingers over the faded images. Benjamin at the age of 3, holding my face with his little hands. Benjamin at the school dance, smiling crookedly, wearing the suit I sewed by hand because we couldn't afford a new one. Benjamin at graduation, with the diploma I helped fund with nights of work and sore backs. And now, Benjamin married. Now, what did the sore happen without me? I closed the album. I walked to the bookshelf where my Bible is. I opened to the page marked with a blue ribbon. Psalm 91. He that dwelleth in the secret place of the Most High shall rest under the shadow of the Almighty. I repeated it out loud, almost a whisper. But it didn't sound like comfort. It sounded like a distant memory of a time when I felt protected. I picked up the phone and dialed his number again. Once, twice, 3 times. Call not answered. No message. No explanation. I sat on the edge of the bed and stared at my hands. Hands that were once firm. That held the world for him. Now, once they said chapel, trembling, a yoga, and his soul sand empty, high silver town, left one. I went to the kitchen, opened the fridge, but I didn't feel like it. Mom, I closed it without taking anything away. I wasn't even hungry. My whole body was mute. That day, I didn't have lunch. I didn't have dinner. I just drank water and walked from one side of the house to the other, as if looking for something that was lost. And maybe I had really lost it. Not an object, but a place. My place. For the first time, I realized that I was no longer part of it. That's it. My daughter. This is a pain that I do not wish on anyone, because when you lose a person, you cry. But when he realizes that he has lost the meaning in her life. Life. You shut up, and silence has no consolation. Way. At night, I went to sleep without turning off the lights. I lay face to the wall. Now I'd hugged the pillow and whispered to myself, softly, as if telling a sad secret that the world doesn't want to hear. Well, I've been forgotten. That phrase kept hammering inside me like a sentence. And that's why I'm here, opening my heart and telling my story, because I know there are a lot of people who have felt this way too. If you're listening to me, now Tom, and I do come. Leave a like on this video and subscribe to the channel. I still have a lot of things in store to tell you. Stories that hurt, but that also teach. Stories that need to be told, so that no woman thinks she deserves to be left aside. And speaking of being left aside, what happened the following week was the biggest slap I've ever received, and it wasn't even with my hand. Have you ever been forgotten by someone and then used by that same person as if you were just an ATM? So wait to see what they asked me for after the wedding. You won't believe it. One week. That was the time it took for the silence between us to be broken, and it wasn't with an apology, nor with a gesture of repentance. It was with a request for money. It was late afternoon when the phone rang. I was in the backyard, picking up the dry leaves near the lavenders. The sun was already beginning to hide behind the neighboring rooftops. I answered with an ice heart. The voice on the other end was hers. Lena. Hi? As if nothing had happened. As if he hadn't ripped me off the ground with 4 words the week before. Margaret. Hi. How are you? Paused shortly and continued. Ha! Look, I know it's all a little tense, but Ben said maybe you could help. We are behind on rent. The owner of the building is threatening eviction. I was mute for a few seconds, not surprisingly, and because at that time, surprise no longer fit me, but because I wanted to find the right answer, and it came. Soft as my pain, I took a deep breath and said, Honey, I only help special people on the other side. Now, silence, a heavy, tense silence, like the sound of something breaking, and that was it. It was breaking the idea that I was a never-ending fountain. Lena did not answer. He just turned it off. I sat on the porch and stared at the sky, turning purple. It was funny how that phrase that hurt me now came back through my lips with another force. And it wasn't revenge. It was dignity. The next day, it was Benjamin who called. Mom, what was that? You know we're struggling. He tried to explain, as he always does. He tried to paint that hidden marriage as a gesture of simplicity, of economy. It was something intimate. Mom, only for a few people. I listened to everything in silence. But before he finished the role play, I was blunt. I saw the pictures. Ben wept, and I did. A friend from the church choir showed me. He said he saw it on Lena's cousin's Instagram. There they were. Morning was hatching out the diagonal, chopped out. Lena in white, Ah, in a dress that I recognized from afar. I paid the seamstress myself. Champagne glasses, golden balloons, table set, and her parents sat next to her, smiling. There was even a video of the moment of the votes. With applause and tears, there was only one thing missing. Me, the mother who raised him alone. Pound, raised, iron owl. The woman who paid for college. Car, now. Daughter-in-laws, surgery, month's rent. I was not part of their intimacy. I was just a resource, an emotional and financial portfolio. Sikyo once said, "You could have told me." I said, "I." And he replied, "Niwata Jovan, Sidam Sigefto, Abaro Akta," in a tone that still pains me to remember. I thought you wouldn't understand. What I don't understand, Benjamin, is how to forget a mother. How you spend a whole day saying yes, and I do, surrounded by guests, toasts, music, and at no time do you think, my mother should be here. What I don't understand is how you swear love to one woman while abandoning another. But I didn't say that. I just said, I see. And now, oddly say it, Ben, who doesn't understand? Now, I see it's me. He hung up without saying goodbye. But Onarjina was no bell. And I stood there, phone in hand. Oh, you feeling that, wow, for the first time, I had said no. For the first time, I didn't bow down. And you know what's sadder? They went surprised by the pain. They were surprised by the refusal. That's what hurts. Realize that your love has become an obligation, that his presence has become a burden. But that day, something changed in me. I was still the same woman with a calm voice. But now, with a new courage, a silent courage. And that's when everything started to go wrong for them. Because if they thought I was going to continue to be the carpet on which you step without guilt, they were about to discover that no mother forgets what they did to her. But would they realize before it was too late? Or would they continue to think that I was just a sensitive old woman until the truth knocks back on their door? Just wait to see what happened the following Sunday. They came back, but this time I was different, very different. That night, after Benjamin hung up without even calling me Mom, I went to the bedroom and pulled out the red hardcover notebook. It was the same where Thomas wrote down our expenses in the days when money was counted penny by penny. I flipped through the pages carefully, smelling the old smell of the paper, as if each page held not only numbers, but pieces of our life. I took a blue pen, sat down at the kitchen table, and started writing a list, an inventory, a record, not of what they took from me, but of what I delivered without batting an eyelid. I wrote first, Lena's wedding dress, $800. After, Noi Town Silva. Rents paid in 2021, $3. 200. Why? I remembered that the following year there was another difficult period, another $4. $800 in rent. No, convert city home. And then 3 more months in 2023. Rent 2023, $4. 0. Kept. Ben's used car, $6. 500. Home. He had his credit maxed out at the time. Moo. And I wanted to help him not to be on foot. I went to the branch with him, signed the check, and smiled when he turned the key for the first time. Christmas gift, TV 55, $480. New desk for the apartment, $600. Couch, $1. 100. May. Lane&S online course, $450. When I finished, when I stopped, me, took a deep breath and added it all up. So toxtem charm. The total exceeded $26. 0. $26,930. It was almost all that was left of Thomas' life insurance. Money that was for my old age. To fix the roof. To pay for a better health plan. No conlai, no tesoba. Guardansio, Ochernse. Maybe to visit my sister in South Carolina. And there it was. Delivered. Emptied. Oh no, and smile. Dollar for dollar. In the name of a love that now ignored me. Wow. Hot to and uncertain. What's it to get? I didn't cry. I swear I didn't cry. But my eyes burned. Because that wasn't just money. It was the overtime I did sewing for neighbors. They were the dinners I didn't eat out. The generic drugs I bought instead of the good ones. Every penny on that list was a piece of me. And I was giving. I am Yotis, giving, until there is not even the right to be invited to the wedding. I closed the notebook slowly, like someone closing a coffin. I got up, went to the bedroom and kept the notebook inside the sock drawer, next to Thomas' letters and the photos of little Ben. All that was left of my story seemed to fit on that small, silent altar. No, sometimes we don't need the other to ask for forgiveness. He just needs to see it. See what it cost. See how much it hurt. And maybe that's why I'm telling you all this now, because you may also be there, remembering what you have already given, what you have already done. No, and wondering if it was worth it. And I tell you, it's not about thanks or not. Maloo. It's about how long we will shut up thinking that to love is to annul ourselves. Keep this phrase with affection, because the most remarkable moment in my history is yet to come. Mine, just the following Sunday, while I was tidying up the house, as if nothing had happened, I heard footsteps at the gate. It was him, Benjamin. Alone, with a bouquet of flowers in his hand and a hesitant smile. For a moment, something in me warmed up. For a second, the injured mother almost forgot everything. Almost. But what he said to me there, standing on the porch, was what showed me that he still had more lies ahead of him. Because even regret, when it comes with ulterior motives, has a smell. And his, it came too fragrant. Do you want to know what he came to ask for? After all, so get ready. Because the most bitter part was yet to be served. The next morning, I woke up to the insistent noise of the telephone. It was early. The sun had barely pierced the curtains of the room. I watched the device touch the corner table, as if facing an old ghost. I knew it was him. I didn't answer. No one did. I got up calmly, prepared my chamomile tea, put on my gray wool cardigan, and went to the bank. It had been years since I stepped foot there for anything other than to withdraw change or sign some paper. But that day, I went with a purpose. The manager lied, Miss Mr. Noun Klein, recognized me immediately. A kind man with round glasses who attended me when Thomas passed away, and I had to go through the insurance papers. He led me to his desk and asked with that usual smile, "What can I help with today?" "Mrs. Wild, I would to tell you control." "Margaret." I took a deep breath. "I want to cancel all the automatic transfers I make to Benjamin Whitmore. Every month, odd money comes into his account. I want it to end today." He arched his eyebrows, surprised, and looked at me carefully, as if he didn't know if he should ask. But he asked, "Is everything okay?" I held his gaze. My eyes were steady for the first time in a long time. I felt like I had 2 feet planted on the ground. I'm learning to say no. He nodded with a respectful nod. Picked on the computer and cancelled everything. I left the bank lighter, as if every penny I missed was a part of me coming back to my chest. The phone didn't stop ringing that day. First, his number. How don't says history. Then one sound. Lena. Then unknown numbers. Perhaps they were friends of theirs. Perhaps they were just disguised insistences. I didn't answer any. I left the phone in the living room and went for a walk. I went to the park where I took Benjamin when he was 6, 7 years old. It was there that he ran with his knees skinned and shouted, "Look, Mom," with pride at any little thing he did. I sat on a wooden bench under the shade of a huge tree. I saw children playing, mothers distracted on their cell phones, fathers laughing with their children, and there, now, looking at all that, a question crossed me like a razor. Where did that boy who said I was his heroine go? Where did that look of gratitude, that tight hug at the end of the day? That "I love you," Mom whispered in the car before bed. Has he disappeared? Oh. Or did she grow up believing that a mother is eternal, infinite, no, available? I don't have that answer, but I know what I felt there. A mixture of grief and relief, as if I had buried an illusion, and in its place, a new truth sprouted. One, I am no less of a mother, because I am no longer a crutch. I stopped for a moment on that bench and thought, we spend our lives saying yes, one yes after the other, until one day, yes becomes an obligation. Oh, and when we say no, it's not revenge, it's liberation. If you've ever felt that, comment below. And so when found, he writes to understand, or it's true, because when we start saying no, that's when you really start to hear it. I returned home in the late afternoon. Wow. The sky was golden, and in memoriam was yours, John D.B. With that silence of late Sunday, I passed by the porch, entered the living room, unplugged the phone, and sat in the rocking chair with my red notebook on my lap. I looked at the numbers, I looked at the names, and I closed the cover, like someone who closes a phase. Now I knew it was not my duty to repair the damage of those who chose me for convenience. But fate, fate is an old joker, because just when I thought I had found my peace again, I received an unexpected visitor at my door, and this time it wasn't Benjamin. It was someone who brought me information I never expected to hear, and that would change everything I thought I knew about that marriage. I came back from the walk lighter, my son, my body tired, but my mind clear. The park was beautiful that day, with the fallen leaves forming golden carpets on the ground. I walked slowly, thinking about the decisions I had been making. One by one, you earn into yourself. Oh, hi, thirsty. And feeling that, for the first time in a long time, I was coming back to myself. But as soon as I turned the corner of my street, something froze me. The two cars were there, Benjamin's and Lena's, standing in my garage as if they owned the place. My heart beat faster. The front door was wide open. For a second, I thought it was a robbery, but it was worse. When I entered, I found the three of them sitting at the living room table. Benjamin, Lena, and a man in a gray suit with a briefcase next to him. The scene looked like an armed courtroom inside my own house. I looked around and saw that my papers were open on the table. The red notebook, my accounts, even the deed to the house. Benjamin stood up slowly. Mom, we need to talk. I stood still, not moving, feeling the ground flee. Lena forced a smile and said, as if reading a script, "It's just worry. Margaret, we're trying to help you." The man introduced himself. Dr. Fisher, now not in about. They said, I represent their legal interests in this time of transition. That word, transition, echoed inside me like a whispered threat. Benjamin continued, I'll sigh. We think you're a little confused. You know, forgetting things, reacting strangely. It's no big deal. But the lawyer recommended a temporary power of attorney, just to help with financial decisions until everything stabilizes. You mean, take control of my life? I asked, without changing my tone. Why? He looked away. Fisher opened the briefcase, began to show the papers. It is a common procedure. You just need to sign here. It's just in case. Precaution for what? I thought. No. To prevent me from canceling anything else? To ensure that the money that is left still reaches their hands? I looked at Lena. She didn't say a word. He watched everything with a contained twinkle in his eyes. It was at that moment that I understood. That was not an impulse. It was flat. He had been armed for a long time, maybe since before the wedding. Maybe from the moment they saw that I was getting older and still had some money saved. But they forgot one detail. Sen, Sa, and Sidaptan. I was still here, now, whole, hell, lucid, noun, and plentiful. I walked to the table calmly, noun. I took my documents, now, the notebook, my deed, my accounts. I collected everything as someone who collects the pieces of herself. Then I closed the briefcase and looked into the eyes of the man in a tie. You are a lawyer, Dr. Fisher. Nay, you could doctor. So you must understand when I say this with legal clarity. Whoever enters a house without being invited has already declared himself an enemy. None of them said anything. Silence was a pit where each one sank into their own shame. But they were not ashamed. He was in a hurry. Benjamin stepped forward in a final appeal. Mom, that's not it. We want to take care of you. Care or control? I replied, now. And I turned around. I went to the door and opened it. Wide open. I stood there, with my hand firmly on the doorknob. You can leave, the lawyer tried to argue. You need to talk to someone you trust. Someone to be trusted? I replied. No kite. I trust myself, one by one. They left. Lena was the last, with her eyes narrowed. With her eyes narrowed, not looking back. I closed the door calmly. I locked it with a key, and I stood there, leaning against the wood. Breathing slowly. That house had seen so much. Birthdays, fevers, dreams, but I never imagined that I would see the day when my own son would try to erase me while I was still alive. Now, it was no longer just disrespect. It was a threat. It was an invasion. And I knew I couldn't wait any longer for regrets. From then on, I would have to protect myself. But how? Alone? I'm almost 72 years old, with no experience with laws, lawyers, lawsuits. I didn't know where to start, but he knew who to turn to. A friend I hadn't seen in years, a woman who went through something similar, and that he knew exactly what to do when his own family became an enemy. And what she revealed to me, everything changed. Everything. In the days that followed, something in me broke, but it was a good break. Like that crack that happens in the ice before the water runs again. I started with the locks. I called the locksmith early in the morning. I want everything new. Mr. Hild and Shelm. Blake. Front door. Nailed. Heidia. Sinchom. Back door. Even the basement door. Sound. He looked at me with some curiosity, perhaps wondering if it was for fear of a thief. And it was. But the thief already had a name and surname. He was the one who tried to steal my lucidity and my peace with the excuse of protecting me. After that, I opened the windows of the whole house. I let the air in. The air and the decision to reoccupy myself. Every corner of that house was impregnated with the memory of everything I donated. Gave in. Swallowed. I started with the guest room, which until then had been a storehouse for their souvenirs, gifts, boxes, photos, messes. I emptied everything. I threw away old papers, donated clothes that no one came to pick up, took out the picture frames and kept them in a box. I put a reading chair, a beautiful lamp, and down the exit asked, is a Shaban tower. Then spent a beautiful lamp, bought a blue carpet that I always admired in the store window, but never took it because I thought it was superfluous. Superfluous is to cancel oneself. I learned that is den calm, or they had a chapter. I sensed the sound in the kitchen. Now, honestly, so taxi. I put an end to the decorated dishes that Lena said were tacky. I bought a simple white dish of my liking, and I started cooking just for myself. Hot food, made slowly. No, no rush, no obligation to please anyone. No, and I ate at the table with cloth napkin, flour in a small vase, because I, Margaret Whitmore, nesh down, deserved it. I regained my spaces as someone who collects little pieces scattered over time. The room gained new paintings. The bathroom, new towels embroidered with my name. Even the balcony, which was sad, gained vases of hydrangeas that reminded me of my mother. At night, instead of waiting for a phone call that didn't come, I started reading. Bible on some days, novels on others. I prayed more for myself, less for them. And there was a new peace in this silence. Not the silence of abandonment, no, but the silence of freedom, of choice, a silence that didn't hurt. It healed. The following Sunday, Riskin, Tuesday, Auntie, I went to church in a moss green dress that Benjamin said would make me old. I received compliments. You're radiant, Margaret, and I was, because something in me had changed. The woman who said yes to everything now knew that no is also a gesture of love. Love for yourself. The neighbors began to notice. You look different, Margaret. And I smiled, without explaining, because it wasn't a change of clothes. It was another posture. It was another energy. Every day, I felt stronger, not younger. Not more beautiful, but whole. It's curious how, when we stop pleasing those who never cared, the world starts to open up in a different way. I even started to walk further. I got to know new streets in the neighborhood, sat in cafes alone, talked to new people. I signed up for a gardening course at the community center. I also signed up for a meditation class. Nobody understood very well, but I didn't need them to understand anymore. And if this piece of my life can become a mirror or a hug for someone, help me carry it forward. Like and subscribe here to the channel. It makes more difference than you think. Sometimes, a story told at the right time can prevent another woman from being silent again. But don't think they took my silence for an answer. When they saw that I no longer answered the calls, that I locked the doors, that I took my hand out of my pocket, began to appear by other means. First with messages, then with public indirects, until one day I received a letter, a registered letter. The name on the envelope, Margaret A. Whitmore, well, the island, redonda recipient. And when I opened it, my hands froze, because it wasn't just about emotional pain anymore. Now, it was about war, and they had just declared the first offensive. The letter was folded with almost surgical precision. Inside, a letterhead envelope from the Monroe County Family Court. I read each line with my heart beating in my chest like a door being punched from within. They were asking for my guardianship, my own son, Leo, and the woman he chose. They wanted to declare me incapable. On paper, they said I had growing signs of isolation, one certain harm, a paranoia, and financial instability. They cited the security cameras I installed. No would talk hard, as if protecting one's own house was a symptom of madness. They mentioned that I had broken important emotional bonds, as if cutting money would cut love. And they stated that I rejected family support, as if support was synonymous with control. I stared at the paper for long minutes, until I took a deep breath, folded it calmly, and put it in my bag. Whoa. Then I put on my shoes, grabbed my black leather bag, and walked to the bus stop. My destination was the office of Mr. Harold Weber, nurse, a longtime lawyer, a friend of Thomas, and the only man I knew who would still look upon me as a human being, and not as a bank number. When I entered, Leonard, he received me with the same respectful look as always. He listened to me attentively, without interrupting even once. When I finished, he just said, now insist, I can't enter you. Margaret, let's defend ourselves smartly. Mountain. And so we began. Well, in the following days, I put everything together. All the receipts, statements, bank records that showed how generous I was by choice and not by lack of judgment. I took copies of the doctor's prescriptions, the recent exams, the psychological evaluation I did on my own earlier that year. When I thought I needed to talk to someone, it was all there. Proven lucidity, preserved health, and a whole woman. But the most difficult thing was not to gather the papers. It was facing the fact that that boy who called me a hero. Now I was trying to erase myself with the ink of a judicial petition. I read and reread those documents, and with each line, I understood. They didn't just want my money. They wanted my silence. They wanted to make me invisible while I was still breathing. But they forgot one thing. When a woman ages, she doesn't weaken. It accumulates. It accumulates memory, courage, wisdom, and, in my case, a faith that no one could take. Because if there is one thing that this life has taught me, it is that justice takes time, but it arrives. And I promise you, when it arrives, no one holds back. So, if you're listening to me now, hold on to my story and come with me to the end, because the strongest moment has not yet passed, and when it does, you will feel it with me at the preliminary hearing. scheduled for 15 days later. Wow. The judge wanted to hear from me, from my mouth, none of my truth, nice. And if they thought I was going to get there, shaking with fear, they were about to meet another Margaret, one they never imagined existed. But would I be prepared for everything that would come? Because what they did next was even lower. Now, chase, much more. Me. In the days leading up to the hearing, I realized that there was more dust under the rug than I imagined. It started with a trip to the bank to pick up old copies of transfers, and the clerk, a young lady with curious, kind eyes, asked if I wanted to move the joint account with Mrs. Lena Whitmore as well. As well. I stood still, without reaction for a few seconds. Joint account? She confirmed. It has been active for more than a year, electronically signed by you and her. The mail address is the same as yours. I asked for a copy of the document, and there it was. My signature, only it wasn't mine. The line was similar, but it wasn't mine. Neither the hand, nor the moment. It was counterfeit, a forgery made calmly, by someone who knew that I trusted too much to verify. I left the bench with a heavy heart, but a firm head. Neo. I returned home, sat on the couch and went over every detail of the last few months. I remembered the day Lena insisted on helping me with the cell phone apps. It was that day. She distracted me, asked for my code, said she was going to set everything up to make my life easier. And I, foolish, let him. I gave the password to my soul. Now, she didn't just want what was mine. She wanted my name, my identity, my history, and the nurse. It was then that I decided to dig into everything. Old documents, forgotten cards, electronic bills, in every corner. A surprise. Strange automatic debits, registrations on websites I've never used, even a refused loan application made in my name. But the worst was yet to come. I found out that Mr. Donald Reeves, a gossipy neighbor who lives leaning against the front fence, had written a letter to the court at the request of Lena's lawyer. She said that I was suspicious, reclusive, obsessed with security, and that I seemed confused in some conversations. She even mentioned that I walked very alone and didn't recognize people in the neighborhood. A dirty lie, built with vague phrases to seem true. I went to him. I didn't talk. I only appeared on the sidewalk with the copy of the letter in my hand. Donald, I read this here. Do you really confirm that you wrote these words about me? He turned red. He said that he didn't know he was so serious, that he just wanted to help Lena, who seemed worried. I replied calmly, helping those who lie is lying together. He lowered his eyes, said he didn't want confusion, but that maybe he had exaggerated. I made a point of recording everything, with my cell phone in my coat pocket. At the pharmacy. Another trip. I found out that a clerk named Greg signed a statement stating that I refused a psychiatric prescription. I went there, waited for him to come out of the checkout and asked, "Do you remember selling me some controlled medicine that I rejected?" He widened his eyes. "No, ma'am, I never said that. Oh, I showed this signature, and he turned pale. "Miss, I just signed a paper that Lena brought, saying it was for the health plan. I recorded it all over again. One by one, I dismantled that cardboard castle, lie for lie, with proofs, with dates, calmly. Why I died. No shouting, no scandal. It was like playing chess. They advanced angrily. I responded with strategy. It was in this process that I realized it's never too late to learn how to defend yourself. Life, no matter how long it may be, can always teach us one last game. Sometimes I stop and think about how some memories are marked on us like scars. The day you hear a painful truth, the first time someone calls you weak, the instant you realize that you have been betrayed by those who should protect you. These things don't go away. They shape who you become. And if you, on the other side, have ever experienced something like this, if any memory visited you now, well, leave it here in the comments. Share with me. He just writes, "I remember this," or "I've lived similarly." Memory, when divided, becomes a bridge between souls. And the more I found out, the higher it became. This wasn't just a fight for money. It was an attempt to erase an entire woman and put a label in her place. Incapable. They didn't know it, but the more they pressured me, the more I went back to who I had always been. Margaret, who raised a child alone. That she buried her husband and stood up. Who helped neighbors. Who prayed for strangers. Who knew how to love. But now, he knew how to say enough is enough. At the end of that week, I turned it all over to Attorney Harold. The recordings. The documents. The statements. He looked at me as if he saw not only a customer, but a force. They didn't expect you to fight. And I said, "When Tom, they don't know me." But just when everything seemed ready for a turnaround, an unexpected witness has emerged. A person I would never imagine involved. And that brought with it a truth buried for years. And that explained much more than I imagined about Lena. Benjamin, and even about me. The house smelled of lavender. Again, the same one I planted with Thomas. In the first few years after we bought this piece of land, I remember him saying that lavender was a plant for a strong woman. It doesn't take much to bloom. But when it blooms, no one forgets. And now it grew up again, on the left side of the porch, under my window, as if to say, "You've come to your senses, Margaret." It was Eli, Mrs. Ruth's grandson, who helped me with the new alarm system. A sweet, silent boy, one of those who listen to you with their eyes. He spent 2 afternoons here, installing sensors in the windows, cameras in the entrances, and teaching me how to use the app on my cell phone. I felt safe, but more than that, I felt like the owner of my space again. I hung a sign on the door that I ordered online. Entry only by invitation. Small, Nahian town, light wood, delicate letters. Whoa, a subtle but definitive warning. I started attending embroidery classes at the community center more often. The ladies there, Nancy, Loretta, Lan, June, welcomed me with smiles and sympathetic looks. And, contrary to what Lena wanted to make it seem, they saw in me not a confused old woman, but a lucid woman, concentrated, attentive to every point, to every conversation. One day, during a class, June said to me, "No, you don't look like anything they're trying to paint." And there I understood. My truth did not depend on convincing anyone. It just needed to be lived. The neighborhood began to see me differently. I was no longer the lady who was left behind by her son. I was the woman who locked the house, faced her own blood, and still smiled at the birds on the porch. People started waving from afar, talking to me in the market, including me. The network was formed without me asking, and for the first time in a long time, I felt like I belonged. Then came the Sabbath. I was pruning the rose bushes on the side of the house when I heard the alarm go off. I ran forward and saw Benjamin trying to open the door with an old key, the same key he used before, without asking. But now, it didn't open anything anymore. He forced the handle impatiently. When he saw me, he turned around in a half-guilty, half-arrogant way. Mom, I can't believe you changed the lock," I replied. "No, son," without raising my voice. "You don't live here, and entry is now by invitation only," he insisted. "I just wanted to talk. You don't answer my messages, because what you call talk, Benjamin, I call sieg." He began to get excited. And at that moment, the car stopped in front of the sidewalk. I myself had warned the monitoring center that any attempt at unauthorized entry would be treated as an invasion. The police came down, talked to him, asked for identification. I stood on the porch, arms crossed, looking at the man who one day came out of my bowels and was now trying to take my house by force. After some explanations, the police asked him to leave. He left, upset, muttering something about being a son is no longer worth anything. And that hurt. Of course it hurt. But the pain no longer ruled me. That night, I sat in the armchair in the living room, turned on the lamp, and read for hours. The smell of lavender came from the open window. The house was at peace, and so did I. It was that night that I wrote something in my notebook, right at the top of the page. They thought they were surrounding me, but they were the ones who were cornered. And if you think that is where their attempt to bend me ends, it didn't end, because the next day, an unexpected summons arrived, a formal request for me to attend a meeting with the judge and an independent evaluator. But it was not only that. Someone someone very close had changed sides, and what this person revealed I would put everything I thought I knew in check. Everything. The morning after the scare of the attempted break-in, I put on my navy blue blouse, the one I wore to Benjamin's christening many years ago, and walked to the main bench in town. The air was cold, no, but I felt my body warmed by a serene courage. When I got to the counter, I asked to speak to the manager. I waited, seated, with my bag in my lap, watching the cars pass slowly through the window. When I was called, I entered the room with firm steps. I want to close all my accounts. Today, no, the manager, she went, a caring woman named Sheila. Frowned, knew, all of them. Mrs. Margaret. Yes, all those who have any history with Benjamin or Lena. I want to start from scratch. She typed a few things, explained the process to me. No, there can't sounded on Western. I've said her much wide. I signed the papers with a steady hand. Now, at the same time, I opened a new account in another bank. Smaller? I check how I deceased it. More discreet? No. Where no one in my family has ever set foot. And I swore to myself, this account is mine, only mine. Then I went to Harold's office. I took with me my document folder, my old will, and the life insurance policy. He welcomed me with hot coffee and a look that said it all. Ready? Very ready. We review clause by clause. We have removed Benjamin's name as a beneficiary. We have removed any rights from Lena. The New Testament now reflected who really cared for me. A small part for the community center, another for the church, and the rest divided among causes that touch me. Elderly women who were victims of financial abuse and young volunteer caregivers. And I made it clear, not a penny for those who called me incapable. Then I went to the post office. The employee recognized me. Wes, Anacom, willing or Selcha. I don't want to tell you. Oh, good morning, Mrs. Margaret. I replied with a firm smile. I need all mail coming from Benjamin Whitmore or Lena to be returned to the sender. I don't live in that place with them in my life anymore. She hesitated for a moment. How? Then nodded. Of course. Nam. I can put that on record. When I left, I felt a lightness in my chest that I hadn't felt in years. A release without fuss, as if I had collected, one by one I say still, the keys they tried to steal from me. Harold, always methodical, made a point of sending a formal letter, now, a registered, stamped, and sealed envelope tightly, It contained a revocation of any access, any representation, any authorization. That letter was more than a document. It was the end point in a book that had already made me suffer too much. When it was posted, I was on the porch, looking out over the garden for the first time in many years. I looked at that house and felt that it was mine again. Mine, the way I built it with Thomas, without a shadow of blackmail, without traps disguised as affection. I sat on the porch swing, how, listened to the birds, and said in a low voice, "Now it's mine alone." He didn't just talk about the house, he was talking about me, of my body, of my decisions, uh, of my history. Wow. I had untied myself. Moya. I cut the knots gently, like someone undoing a tired braid. But, like any thread that comes loose, sometimes he reveals what was hidden underneath. Because just when I thought silence would come back to live here, a new visit has arrived. And she didn't come alone. When I was so tired, he carried information that would change everything. Absolutely everything. I was sweeping the dry leaves from the balcony when Eli appeared with his cell phone in his hand, his face a little awkward. "Mrs. Margaret, did you see this here?" I picked up the device, and there it was. Lena, with that voice trained to sound sweet, reading a letter open to the public. White background, light makeup, now, and an expression of false sadness. My mother-in-law, who we loved so much, unfortunately is not well. She pushed us away, blocked our numbers, and we are worried about her health. Everything we did was out of love. I read it to the end. A clear attempt to turn rejection into abandonment, to invert the ends of the rope. The final signature was Benjamin's. "I've always been a good son, in the heart, but am still praying for my mother's recovery." I stood there, staring at that screen as if watching a poorly rehearsed puppet theater. I didn't cry. I didn't react angrily. I just handed Eli the phone back and said, "They still don't understand that the stage has fallen." The comments started popping up. Some, "They're still topping." Of course. Swallowed their version. Poor Lena. I see. Nah. Worried son is a rare jewel. Old age is ungrateful. But others had memory. There was a girl named Teresa who wrote, "Lena Pound, you forgot to tell you that she paid for your car in cash, right?" A gentleman named Malcolm commented, "I remember when I saw Margaret selling her mother's jewelry at the antique shop to help you. Is this senility or generosity?" And one that touched me deeply was June's, my friend from the community center. But she's not crazy. Not. You're too lucid. It just got tired of being used. I sat on the couch, the sun invading the room, and read each comment as if they were hugs. It was weird. You know? To be defended by someone I didn't even know well. But the truth, it's just that those who suffer in silence for a long time one day become a mirror for those who are in the same silence. And when one speaks, then listen to each other. Now, when talkies, there are things that we live and keep. But maybe by telling, we help another heart to breathe. Like this video and sign up. And let's make this story reach those who need it. Because loneliness does not always come from abandonment. Sometimes it is born from overgiving. I continued to watch their desperation from afar. Lena trying to explain herself on the networks. Benjamin posting old photos with me. I survived now. From the time when I still said yes to everything. But it was too late. The world had changed, and so did I. I realized that even their compassion smelled of interest. It was a feather in disguise, with purpose. They didn't want me for love. They wanted me as currency and a coin. It only serves while circulating. I stopped circulating. Oh, and for them, this was unacceptable. The next day, Harold called me. Margaret, they tried to file a new petition. Now, using as evidence the negative comments you would be generating against them. They want to claim that you are instigating defamation. I laugh softly, almost as if listening to an old joke. Harold, they're desperate, and when the lie begins to unravel, the last attempt is to shout louder. He agreed. The judge is already seeing the pattern. Don't worry, Margaret. But true tranquility only arrived when I received an unexpected message. A name I hadn't read in years appeared on my cell phone screen. And that name, he carried a story that only I knew in full. Because sometimes the past decides to knock on our door when we least expect it. And when I answered, the truth that came along with it was capable of turning everything upside down. Even what I thought about myself. The Rochester courthouse had that icy smell of old paint and waxed wood, the kind of place where truth and lies often bump into each other in the hallway. I arrived early with Mr. Harold by my side. Folders organized, my hair tied up as I liked to wear it. In the days when Thomas still went with me to church dances, I wore a discreet beige set, with no pretensions of attracting attention. Oh, I wasn't there to look like it. No, it was there to be. When I entered the room, I looked around and saw Lena sitting with her hands crossed in her lap, dressed in light gray, eyes lowered, light makeup. Oh, her face rehearsed to move. Benjamin was on the other side, cowering like a boy caught red-handed, without the courage to meet my eyes. I wasn't surprised. What surprised me was the tightness in my chest, not of anger, but of mourning. No. It was like burying a version of my son that only existed in my memory. Judge Emerson entered. Wayo Castellan, a tall man, with thick glasses, impeccable white hair. He had that air of someone who has seen too much to be impressed by little. The testimonies began. First, Lena Manchin. She spoke slowly, with that tone that mixes victimhood and strategy. Your Excellency, we just wanted to protect you. She started to act in a disconnected way, pushed the family away, installed cameras. It seemed that he didn't trust anyone anymore. The judge listened, taking notes little, but observing a lot. Benjamin spoke next. She stammered at first, then repeated the same litany. I just wanted to help my mother. She was the one who taught us to take care of others. Benjamin, and you, how did you become an echo of someone who never knew you well? Then it was my turn. Harold looked at me with a slight nod, and I stood up. I walked to the witness stand. Ah, the microphone was lower than I expected, but it was enough to clear my throat once. And I did. Take it easy. With truth, I told him about the money sent, awareness of the rents paid, the ignored messages, the locked door. I showed my medical exams, the recent psychological evaluation, all the bank statements signed in my own hand. Each document was a pebble removing the rubble they had tried to throw on my reputation. And when the judge asked me if I would like to make one last statement, I took a deep breath, looked at my son, even though he didn't look back at me, and said, "I have not lost my mind. Your Honor, I only lost patience with those who only loved me with my card." The sentence came out before I thought. It was as if it had formed alone in the quietest corners of my tiredness. And when it echoed through the room, there was a silence, one of those silences that don't hurt, liberate. The referee dropped his pen for a second. Mom, what? Harold smiled with his eyes. Even the girl typing the transcript seemed to hold her breath. And that's when I want to tell you something. From the bottom of my heart. Sometimes the strongest moment in a person's life is not when they scream, but when she hears herself for the first time out loud. Me. Because it was there, at that moment, that I felt something changing. I was no longer being judged. I was being seen. And those who have lived a lot know being seen is much rarer than being heard. The judge suspended the hearing for the final evaluation of the documents. It would be a few days of waiting until the decision. I left that building like someone leaving a wake, with relief and pain, with an end and a new beginning. But I still didn't know that the real decision that would change everything, it would not come from the judge. It would come from a woman, one that no one expected. And that was about to change the course of my story. At the end of that rainy week, I returned to the court with the calm of someone who had already said everything I needed. It was the last day. The decision would be read. I sat in the same chair, adjusted my gray wool coat over my shoulders, and held on tight to the bag where I carried an old photograph of me with Benjamin on the playground, when he still called me my heroine. On the other side of the room, Lena had sunken eyes, without makeup this time. Benjamin seemed smaller than I remembered, not in height, but in presence. When Judge Emerson entered, the room seemed to hold his breath. He had better round the bush. After detailed analysis of the documents, medical reports and testimonies presented, this court finds no evidence of mental incapacity on the part of Mrs. Margaret Whitmore. Margaret, the petition is dismissed. A cutting silence filled the room, and then came the full sentence. Procedural costs and attorneys' fees will be borne by the plaintiffs. I didn't smile. I only lowered my head slightly as a sign of respect. Lena covered her face with her hands and stumbled off the benches. Benjamin hesitated. Laura stood there for a moment, as if he wanted to say something, but no longer had the right words. In the hallway, he caught up with me. "Mom, can I talk to you?" I turned around slowly. I looked into his eyes as only a wounded mother knows how to look. "You turned me into an enemy when all I wanted was to be a good memory. Now we are strangers by your choice. And I kept walking. The sound of my footsteps was the only response he got. A few days later, the postman left a letter with the Brookside Properties stamp. I opened it, right there, on the balcony. It was a formal notification. Benjamin and Lena had been evicted for an breach of contract. Life takes turns, but sometimes it just turns around and forces you to face what you left behind. I folded the letter carefully, put it in the desk drawer, and went to water the plants. There was no celebration. There was no toast. Just that kind of silence that comes when justice comes, and you don't have to make noise. That night, I sat in my favorite armchair and lit a candle for Thomas. They don't know, honey, but you still take care of it here. His portrait on the shelf looked back at me with that serene expression. I closed my eyes for a moment and felt something I hadn't felt in a long time. Peace. But I still didn't know that fate sometimes sends a final message. Not to hurt, but to close the door for good. And that message was on its way. It had been months since I had visited Thomas, not because of a lack of nostalgia, that is never missing, but because I had to take care of myself first. And he would understand. I chose a clear Sunday morning, one of those that the sky seems to remind us that there is still beauty in simple things. I went to the Holy Sepulchre Cemetery with a bundle of white flowers tied with a light blue ribbon. I always took daisies and lilies. He liked flowers that didn't require much. I walked slowly between the graves until I found his, which is near an ancient oak tree. The stone was clean. Like the last time I went there, I knelt down, took a deep breath, and said, with my eyes closed, I tried to raise our son with all of me. I gave love, hell, I gave time, and yelled. I gave ground, love. He chose to forget, but now, dear, now I remember myself. I stood there for a while, in silence. I didn't ask for anything. I didn't cry. I just let the wind take away what still needed to go. And at that moment, I knew the emptiness that hurt me so much was not going to disappear, but it could be filled in another way. The following week, I returned to the community center in Brighton, where I had started watercolor classes before everything went wrong. When I entered, the ladies greeted me with real smiles. Donna Hilda brought me a slice of lemon cake. Mildred hugged me without asking anything, in silence, as if they knew that the most important thing had already been said or lived. I started to participate in reading soirees. I got a taste for music afternoons with piano and violin. I went back to attending services on Saturday afternoons, not out of obligation, but by choice. It was there, in the midst of women who had also been used, forgotten, or left behind, that I understood. Pain can be what unites us, but it can also be what heals us. Together, one on. The phone still rang. From time to time, are still cut with unknown numbers. But now I let it play, not out of revenge, but because I learned that I don't have to run to answer anymore when no one ran to listen to me. I started to sleep better. No waiting for a call. no anxiety. I learned to wake up without the weight of being useful to someone, to make coffee just for me, and feel that this is enough. Gradually, I became that woman I myself would have liked to have met before. The other day, what is so curious? Illy, the neighbor's grandson, asked me, Mrs. Margaret, do you regret having done so much for them? I looked at him and said, no, Anasiri, one. My son, I would regret it if I had forgotten myself forever. But now, I remember what you are saying. I'm sorry, can sue. And that changes everything. And if you've come this far with me, listening to me tell every bit of this path, it's because perhaps you've also forgotten yourself for too much love. But let me tell you something important. We can get lost trying to hold the world, but it only takes one decision, just one, to find yourself again. But before I tell you how it all ended, you need to know what I did with the last gift they couldn't steal. Because sometimes what we keep silent, it is precisely what saves other lives. And that's what I was about to do. The other day, how, while walking along the sidewalks of my neighborhood, I noticed the dry leaves forming drawings on the ground. Autumn has always been my favorite season. There is something fair about the leaves that fall. They do not make a scandal. They do not beg to stay. They just let go. And that's how I've been living. My house today's mine alone. No unwanted noise. No open doors for those who don't know how to take care of it. The phone still rings. Yes, but I have learned to distinguish the sounds that hurt from the ones that heat up. And when a letter from Benjamin arrived in the mail, handwritten, with my handwriting on the envelope, I didn't cry. I just kept it in a cardboard box with a blue lid and wrote with a thick pen things that no longer belong to me. And I did. Because not all forgiveness needs a response. Sometimes it is enough not to let it enter again. Today, I get up early, make my coffee, walk through the park, write poetry hidden in a notebook with a red cover, and I learn to do all this without expecting applause. The freedom I have now has not been given. It has been built, brick by brick, with the calloused hands of someone who has loved until it hurts. But you know what? What taught me the most was not betrayal. It was the silence that came later. He showed me that pain passes. But what do we do with it? If I could leave only one lesson here, it would be this. Never accept being called weak just because you love too much. And never let love for others erase you to the point that you forget the way back to yourself. To love is beautiful, but to love, it is urgent, And if you, on the other side, went through something similar, Taite Diokern, you can be reborn at 71. On that day, you can flourish. Even when they thought we were just roots, you can find peace after contempt. Just do what I did. Stop trying to fit in where there is no room for us. Thank you, from the bottom of my heart, for staying with me so far. You didn't just hear one story. You held my hand in every memory. That's it. This is priceless. If this story touched you in any way, leave a like. It's like a hug that warms up and helps this channel continue to exist. Subscribe too, because here we will always have a new coffee, a lap, the sinu, a memory to share. Tell me here in the comments which city you are watching. I read everything with affection, and it activates the bell. See? That way you don't lose when the coffee is brewed again. Don't go away yet. No. Listen to the next true story that will appear on the screen. Always remember, each wrinkle tells a story, and each story carries a strength. Watch the next video here on the channel with another incredible story.